But first tonight, to Israel's war on terror. Israel rescues one hostage in a difficult operation while a new axis of evil emerges. Netanyahu rightly rejects calls for a ceasefire, and US National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says Israel and Egypt are prepared to let hundreds of Palestinian foreign citizens leave, but Hamas has refused. In one glimmer of good news, Ori Megidish, a young female soldier held hostage, has been rescued by Israeli special forces. Ori, just a teenager at 19, was captured by Hamas while serving at a lookout on the southern border. She's now the first to be brought home by Israel's intelligence services and special forces as part of the ground operation in Gaza. And she had an emotional reunion with her family, and dozens of people who don't even know her gathered outside her family's home to celebrate. One rescued, 238 more to go. Hamas released a hostage video of 3 Israelis who make demands for a ceasefire and the exchange of prisoners. They attack the Netanyahu government. One angrily demands that Netanyahu set them free. Israeli media hasn't shown the video because it's part of Hamas's propaganda campaign, and here Sky News has made a decision not to show any hostage videos. This war that Israel was forced into after the October 7 terror attacks can't be seen in isolation from world events. Hamas is financed and armed by Iran, which reportedly gave the terror organisation the green light to attack Israel. There's now an axis of evil that's emerged, an anti-Western alliance between Iran, North Korea, Russia and China. Foreign Affairs editor for The Australian, Greg Sheridan, today writes that the strategic cooperation between these 4 nations is now intense. He writes there's an axis of evil that's emerged, an anti-Western alliance. He says North Korea is supplying weapons to Russia. The day US President Joe Biden visited Israel, Vladimir Putin was in Beijing, lavishly hosted by Xi Jinping. He writes that Putin, in turn, hosted Hamas leaders in Moscow. Iran supplies deadly drones in large quantities to Russia, and Putin has pledged Russia's long-term support for North Korea. Sheridan writes that not since World War II has the West been so strategically threatened as today. All of the West's most powerful and important enemies are involved in military attack against it, or supporting attack by their allies, or proclaiming they plan to attack soon. And Sheridan goes on to write about how the mass demonstrations we're seeing around the world are often blatantly anti-Semitic. And he writes that the momentary outrage we saw has basically effectively disappeared. It's actually unbelievable how quickly the world moved on from the October 7 terror attacks to now demand of Israel a ceasefire. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has overnight categorically ruled out a ceasefire, as he should.
Calls for a ceasefire are calls for Israel to surrender to Hamas, to surrender to terrorism, to surrender to barbarism. That will not happen. Ladies and gentlemen, the Bible says that there is a time for peace and a time for war. This is a time for war.